Good afternoon. I'm Lori GIlhousen. I am a registered nurse, certified diabetes care and education specialist here at Ashtabula County Medical Center. And today is World Diabetes Day, hence the blue. You might see blue things, blue circles in some things talking about diabetes. It's the UN and that made a whole World Health Association thing about, focusing on the fact diabetes is worldwide. It's not just here. And so many times you might feel like you're the only one in the room or the only one in the town, and you're not. You're not alone. There's a lot of people that live with this disease. And the nice part about this is we're trying to get people to use language that's more patient-centered and more inclusive. So we don't want you to call yourself a diabetic unless that's how you feel. We want you to be that person that lives with diabetes. You're living with it. You're not your disease. We don't always, so that's a new language thing that we're trying to change up. The numbers, if you're checking blood sugars, they aren't good or bad. They are you safe or not? And how did you get there? So there's lots of parts to diabetes. There are three main types and a fourth one that says it's knocking on the door. So if you have type 1 diabetes, that means that at one point in time, you had a pancreas that was working fine. And then you had a flu, a virus, something that turns your immune system to destroy the cells that make insulin. So that's why people with type 1 need insulin to live. It doesn't, granted, food choice is always a piece of the puzzle, but do you have any insulin production to keep you safe? You need insulin even when you're not eating to keep your muscles moving and your brain working. In type 2, once again, we start out with a great pancreas full of all these alpha cells and beta cells ready to do whatever we ask it to do through our whole lifetime. And then life starts bringing it out and we start to lose them. So by the time you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, we used to only get you when you're around half of those cells already gone. But now because the push is checking for this earlier, acknowledging that there's other risk factors to put you into, let's look earlier. We can catch it while you still got more beta cells working. That's the whole point. Lots of times people will say, I didn't have any of those symptoms that are on that list. The thirsty all the time, the hungry all the time, the going to the bathroom all the time, a wound that won't go heal, or tired all the time. And they just go for a regular lab checkup and something's off. And they go back for the repeat. And yes, it is. It's diabetes before you had any symptoms. That's the best time to catch it, although it's hard to make changes from your lifestyle when you don't notice changing because the blood sugars stay too high too long. But the whole point is the earlier we catch this, the less the damage can be, or we shove the damage further down the road, which could go that way. From right now, wherever we are. The whole point when we start noticing blood sugars higher a little bit, but they aren't quite high enough for us to call it diabetes. That's where it's called pre-diabetes. And we used to call that metabolic syndrome. We used to call that watch being borderline diabetes, and it's that area where your numbers are high enough that we know there's a challenge, but not so high that we're going to call it diabetes. And that's where a lot of push is now to catch that pre-diabetes, make those lifestyle changes that we can, and hopefully prevent type 2 farther down the road as long as we can go. Does that make sense for anybody? Mm-hmm. Any questions? One of the interesting things with type 2 diabetes is called insulin resistance, and the pre-diabetes people face that. I do have to take this little clip out of here. So what happens is whenever we eat, our blood sugar will go up because our body digests our food into sugar and proteins and fats. And so how it's supposed to work is insulin gets released when we eat food. The insulin talks to a receptor on your cell, opens the cell, and something in the cell says, sugar, come on in. And then it uses that sugar for energy. It uses that sugar to make our muscles move, to make our amino acids to build muscle. Anything extra, of course, gets put in long-term storage, but it's after it fills short-term storage. When we don't have enough, oh, get out of there. Okay, there we go. So if we don't have enough insulin to open those doors, my sugar can't get in. But my body is still dumping sugar out because I just had a meal. The liver might be getting nervous because the liver says, oh, hey, need some insulin, don't have it. Liver's job is to dump sugar into your bloodstream so it will say, body, make insulin to get the door open. So that's where we look at that fasting blood sugars or after a meal. How high are you? How long do you stay there before the door opens? So our insulin becomes a rusty key. Guess what's the oil for the rusty key? Taking a walk, doing some gentle strength training. Anything moving muscles oils that up, and the cell is happy and says, I'll take that. Kind of think of the insulin's like that knocking on the door, and the cell on the other side is saying, I'm hungry, feed me. But when the insulin's knocking on the door, the cell goes, I don't know who you are, go away. And so your sugar starts to back up. And then I was going to finally play with my water trick. Here's my water trick. So when we drink liquids, our liquids go through our system just like, oh, I put too much in there. Anyway, they just go right through our system on gravity. They don't depend on our system to digest it and parcel it out. And so they suck up just like a sponge, which putting less water in next time. But the neat part with life, with diabetes, or without it, just plain life in general, when we're young, we get plenty of insulin no matter what we do. As we age, we start getting less and less and less. And then you know how when you're wringing out a washcloth and it's still wet, but you can't wring any more drops out? When you get to that point where you're not getting enough drops for that food to get into your muscles and that sugar to get to build those building blocks, that's when we need help. Halfway through, we might start suggesting some medications, some pills to help out. There's some new meds that are kind of moved up on the list. So it's not a failure, it's we're trying to help your body learn your new lifestyle, but keep your numbers safe in between. So that's the hard part, is like, as we age, the more life rings out that sugar, insulin, the more sometimes it might need some help. Because you still got to eat. That's the hard part. So many people are like, oh, I'm high right now, I guess I won't eat. Your body is still going to sit there and go, but you're still walking, you're still breathing, you're still doing things. You still need some help for the nutrition piece of it. Does that make sense? Was this worth it? I've been thinking about this idea for a long time. A lot less water. But I'll just get that out of the way. Whew. So when we get the word diabetes or pre-diabetes, it's more that call to action of your body needs some help to make things work out. And working out wherever you can, however you can. And the reason we worry about it so much is high blood sugars damage your arteries. They damage your nerve endings. It can damage your eyes, your ears, memory, especially if your numbers are going all over. We kind of think of our blood sugar numbers as static. Whatever that number is today, that's the number it is all day or all week or all month. And every minute of the day, blood sugars are going up a little bit, down a little bit. So kind of think of waves at the lake. When it's nice and gentle ripples, that's what we're kind of hoping for. Not too low, not too high. Occasionally you're going to have that higher wave after a meal, and then your body's going to take care of it and bring it down. And that's what we try to match with your medications. Where can we keep you safe? We have a lot of medicines now, 3 new ones in the last couple of years, that by themselves, if your blood sugar is safe, they shut off. Blood sugar gets too high, they turn back on, which is kind of cool. We used to have one pill that we knew would give you low blood sugar because it was at its peak of working. At the meal, we usually skip or delay. And then people would be like, I'm always having a problem in the afternoon. So just kind of think about that. Blood sugar is always in motion, just like the lake, it's always in motion. Even when it's calm, you still got those ripples, and blood sugar is doing the same thing. Blood sugar changes almost as fast and often as blood pressure does. Pulse is usually pretty steady. Cholesterols we might look at once or twice a year simply because those don't change as much unless you've done a drastic change or we've started a big medication. So that's why those ones we look at more like every 6 months or so. Okay. And with the holidays coming, I bet everybody wants to know, what do they do with their plate? So this is a small plate, and I'll get the artery out of the way too. Nobody wants to see that now when we talk about food. This is the key to everything. I can't tell you how much watching people find an eating pattern and eating style that works for them and how drastic the change is. You know, and comes a point in time when it's hard to go, what in the world can I eat tonight? I'm sick of trying to figure out what I'm going to eat tonight. And then it gets to the point where sometimes it's just too hard to do it alone. And that's when, if you can add in some extra help, it's life-altering. I watched somebody's blood sugar drop in half, their A1C. No matter what they were doing on their own beforehand, it was always crazy. And 3 months into a new situation, they were finally safe for the first time in 20-some years. So it can be done. And when we do make changes, we always try to go slow. And that's the frustration on the other end when you're starting, because we start you low and add you up slow, because everybody's journey with diabetes is different. The science is kind of always basically there. The art is, how does it work for you? And that's what you do with the diabetes educator. We sit there together and go, is this working for you? What kind of problems are you noticing? And you maybe don't notice the problem. And I might go, that sounds like that was a low, was it? And they're like, yeah, I have that all the time at this time. And I got notes that say for months, never have a low, never have a low. And I'm like, that's something to tell your doctor. And they're like, why? I have that all the time. That scared the daylights out of me when I first type 1 did that. That was struggling and struggling and struggling. And I'm like, oh, but that's important. I know you live it. And that's the thing, you live this every day. And we have to make this plan work for you. And it's so much of that adventure that if you're struggling, 8-inch plate is our goal. Put your 2 hands together. The fingers are your fiber vegetables. You know, the ones that when you go to peel them, they're like really solid. They're not going to be mushy. Those are your fiber vegetables, your carrots, your asparagus, your broccoli, your cauliflowers, all of those things. Your salad greens, mushrooms get to count here, tomatoes count here. 1/4 of your day, each meal, you're looking for protein. And then the other 1/4 of the plate gets to be your carb. So you got the fibery vegetables for half, you got a protein, you get a carb. And there you got a pretty balanced plate. And you don't have to buy a fancy plate, just take the plate you got, and in your head draw a line. And draw the other line, and you're good to go. I get people who want to buy that Corningware plate that I used to have in my office that was sectioned. I'm like, you don't need to section the plate, just do it in your head. The trick, though, is learning what counts in the carb side of the plate. You know, because 1/3 of a cup of rice or pasta is what's 15, if you're counting grams of carbs. That's your plate. A slice of bread, about the size of your hand, usually, is about 15. If it goes in the toaster and you got to cut a little bit of it to make it fit, it's probably 22. Even though that label was mean and told you it had 3 grams of fiber in it. You got to cut a little off to make it fit. It doesn't work that well. I bet everybody's heard the news about a sweet potato versus a white potato. Guess what? The half cup here, still 15 grams of carbs at the end of 2 hours. So it still counts. And then once again, of course, with liquids, that 4 ounces of juice is going to jump my sugar really fast. So if I'm really low, I missed a meal, my meds are kicking in, and I just worked out. And I'm getting to the car, and I'm just lucky I made it to the seat. Might be low. If you got your meter, check it out. If not, treat the low because it's safer than waiting till you get home to your meter and go, oh, look at this, now I'm 20 and I'm lucky I made it. or you don't remember any of the drive in between. So, but if you eat the piece of fruit, your serving size is gonna be bigger. About that tennis ball, that's the place that's 15. The one that you're like, why'd they pick that? They should have let it grow. But if you're down at Brant's or any of the apple orchards and you got one of those big, huge softball size apples, that could be like 4 servings in there. So, tuck them up in the weight, see if they're safe. But the liquid, this is our emergency. You're really low, you really want a sugar liquid to stop the drop. If your sensor is saying 2 arrows down, you want the liquid to stop that drop. But apples are great. And then if you notice that, hey, when I eat the whole apple, my sugar goes a little higher than I want it to, it stays a little longer, maybe add some other food with the apple. Or maybe you can only, for you, it might be half the apple now and the other half later. Or if you want a little bit of apple pie without the crust, cut up your apple and mix up your apple pie spices in there and maybe throw on a few crushed nuts and microwave it for a minute or less. Just get it soft. And then you got apple pie with the carbs of the apple and not all the crust and everything else. And there's a couple of handout sheets over on the table for tips of like swapping out. And that's how I know the tennis ball is about my apple size, and a baseball is like a half a cup for other pieces of food. And then I have lots of food samples. What kind of dinner would you, any questions about a food that you'd like to hop to? And, yeah.
Is there any difference between white rice and brown rice, or is rice rice?
Sometimes rice is rice, but sometimes better rice that doesn't have the shell all the way removed. That's why we say brown rice, because it has more of the shell stuff that will make that hike in your sugar a little slower. Might have a couple of more carbs in it than the white rice. It's more about how is it prepared and how much other stuff is in it. Because if there's a stick of butter in your cup of rice,
yeah,
we kind of defeated the purpose there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just why we were just looking at something recipe-wise, and this is a season of you get recipes everywhere. And I keep going, I wish they would tell you how many servings this is, because when you watch them put 2 sticks of butter and a bunch of sugar in something, and then the other thing that was the main thing, here's 2 sticks of butter in this and 2 sticks of butter in this, and then we're gonna mix those 2 together, and I'm like, oh, yeah, no, butter is good, and it's back on the table, but not necessarily a pound of it in everything you're putting out on the table. And especially the holiday time, if you've got something that your heart is saying, this is really what I want, go get it. Go get what you really want. Don't get some imitation version of it, and own it. I like dessert. So I am not gonna waste dessert night if I know this place has really good what I want on my potato. No, I'm gonna tell them double up on my veggies, give me that smaller piece of meat, and I'm saving my carbs for that one little treat. But own it. Don't beat yourself up for it. Because sometimes, this is the holidays. This might be the only time of the year that the sweet potatoes come the best way in the world. You love them. So you get a smaller portion. It's also the time of the year that you get sweet potatoes and corn. Oh, and don't forget the dinner roll too, and the stuffing. And you want to take a little bit of everybody's, but if there's any way you can con somebody else into this of going like, could we have mixed vegetables instead of the corn or peas? Yes, some people have to only have white because they won't eat the sweet potato, but you don't have to. If you really want the sweet potato, take that. It's one day. As much as Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's Day get condemned for why there's 10-pound weight gain by February, it's 3 meals out of about 1,000 meals in a year. That's the hard part. It does, this is the one time of the year where every Christmas gathering, holiday gathering is in the same week. You're in like 3 or 4 different things and everybody is that same week. Once in a while with family and connecting and visiting, you're a little more nervous. Sometimes the holidays, you're a little more blue, down. This time change, I don't know about you, but I'm like, it's 10 o'clock at night already? How did that happen? And then I look at the clock and it's only 6, and I'm like, I feel like it's dark enough to be 10 o'clock at night. You know, so we're all in that little bit of sleep deprivation of like, well, now it's 10 and I'm laying here staring at the ceiling going, why can't I fall asleep? You know, and it's hard now with the weather changing too to make sure to get your exercise. And I don't mean to say exercise because everybody wants to go, no, not doing that. It's moving more. So if you got a day the back and the hips and the knees say no way, sit in the chair. And even if you're taking the water bottle up here first or out first, then have a sip. Or if it's a cup of coffee, it's still a liquid, because I get a lot of people that won't drink water. It's still a liquid. Let's just at least get liquids in. Maybe one cookie, and then the next snack is an apple. Or a couple of pieces of grapes, which, you know, grapes are a little bit rough, because who's stopping at a handful? You know? And the cheat sheets all say small grape, and it says like 17 of them. I have no idea what they think a small grape is. So I'm gonna say call each grape 1 gram of carb. And you get to 15 grapes, you had 15 grams of carbs. And I'll let you have 2 extra cherries because I cheated you out of a couple of grapes. But fruit, if you can eat it fresh, it's more. It's a larger serving. You're gonna be fuller longer than my adorable little, yeah. This dried fruit, it sucks all the water out, so it's concentrated sugar, which is great in your trail mix, maybe. But are you happy on only this? This guy's 11 grams of carbs. This adorable little sample claims to be 2 tablespoons. And I don't know about you, but I could get that whole thing in one. So if I'm, you know, if you're baking and you're gonna put raisins and stuff and you get that big box, as you're scraping it out, you're gonna go, oh, well, geez, I gotta have more. So it's gonna be really easy to get double serving instead of that already measured out. Because this one, they, you know, measured it because they're not gonna give you 1 extra grape in there to make it last. It's kind of like the craisins too. They're kind of fun until you look at what the serving size is on that. And I'm gonna enjoy that on a salad when I don't have to think about it. But me have a package of craisins to myself, did I do in your food menu pretty good for the holiday? Any other kind of questions or concerns? But it's more finding the portions that work for you. So I don't know about you, but I sometimes get people ask me about spaghetti. And one of the neat things that they're kind of finding, which is kind of interesting, is if I fill out my plate here with my veggies and my meat, because let's face it, 2 little meatballs is not enough. You want a little bit more than 2 little meatballs to offset this adventure. If I eat my veggies first and my protein second, my blood sugar doesn't normally jump up as high. They're finding from a study they did recently that they were telling us about, that having these fiber vegetables first slow down how fast the carb part of the plate will hit your system. And so if you kind of think about your stomach, all my toys normally hit the floor. Anyone that's been up in my office knows this. But if you start with your veggies and then you add your meat, there's less room for the paste. You can always eat more and make it all stretch out to fit, but that's kind of the idea down the road as you work yourself down to a meal plan that works for you. And it's finding out what works for you. You know, maybe this works perfectly, but you're hungry. And so you have a little more meat. If you're going back for seconds, go back for vegetables in this. And if you have that apple pie or a little piece of pie, go for a walk later on. Put the little note that says there was pie today. Or it was that sweet potato thing with the marshmallows on top and the cinnamon, or brown sugar or whatever. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is it true with the rice that if it's day old, it's better for you?
There is some stuff about it being cold. After you get it cold and rewarm it up for potatoes and rice and pasta, it doesn't affect your blood sugar the same way as the fresh, I just finished it and do it. So granted, when they tote these interesting things out, it's usually studied like maybe 20 people, 50 people, and they went, hey, we saw this, which sounds really interesting. But if you check, or if you get a chance and you want to wear a sensor for a week to just learn how your own body does it intermittently, you don't have to own the thing, it's my sensor, you get to wear it and learn. Do that, do it sometime. Here's my finger poke, here's this food, this drink, this whatever it is. Where did my body go? How long did it take it to catch up and come down? But once again, it depends on the mix of what's on the plate too. Because say I was doing chicken wings here instead of a chicken breast. There's a lot more grease and oil in that. So my response to this plate maybe is different than a day that it was just a grilled chicken with herbs and spices and not marinated in something. Same way with the potato. If it's just the potato and maybe a little bit of butter, the jump might be different than the day I slop on the cream cheese, the sour cream and the butter and the chives and the bacon bits. Is that, it's a different mix of the food. So definitely check it out. But yeah, everybody's body digests their food differently every time you eat it too. So this is where you're kind of like, I put the same thing in. I'm supposed to get the same thing out. It's more a law of averages. Was this portion right for me? Did it work this time? Then you check that same portion out a week or two later or the next day. But yeah, I would do that with the rice and the pasta thing because they talk about it a lot. The food composition changes as it cooks. So like with the carrots or the broccoli, I can bring it. If you're eating these fiber vegetables raw, you get to have a whole cup of them, and it's only 5 grams of carbs. But once I steam it and start cooking it, the half a cup becomes the 5, because it started breaking down the fibers, And so once it's cold again, it changes up those fibers again. So yeah, we could do that as an experiment sometime. Maybe March's Lunch and Learn. We'll all take blood sugars before and eat something and then check it after.
Where do we get these sensor things?
With your doctor's order. Here at the Diabetes Education Program, we can dust off your plan. We can ask you, I can do it for you. I can ask your doctor for the order, and I have a sensor that you wear. It's good if you can keep track, whether it's taking pictures of your meals or talking into something on your phone to keep track of when you ate, when you slept. Was this a pain day? Was it a good day, bad day? All those kinds of things help us look at the end, where were those high peaks and valleys? Are you really steady and maybe once or twice something goes off kilter? Because what we're looking at, whether you poke your finger or wear the sensor, is what's the pattern? Is Monday through Friday great and the weekend really rough? Or is Monday through Friday the worst numbers in the world because of maybe stress or whatever, and the weekend is great? Or is it only Wednesday night once a month? Well, if it's always Wednesday night once a month, then we got to look at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to see why it's off. Does that make sense? But yeah, the sensor is easy to wear. It's just a little device, puts a little wire under your skin, so there's a little needle prick and that sticks, and you can take a shower and you can swim and do everything you want with that sensor in there, except try to be careful not to knock it off. Which is hard if you're not used to wearing something. And if you've got a phone, like if you're going to check out diabetes for yourselves or your family, a lot of our devices on the TV say, oh, it works on your cell phone. Don't buy a cell phone until you check at the website for whatever device you're looking at and check to see if your device is on there. Because the brand newest phones, because right now they're turning out all the 2024s, are not going to be on any of your health-related monitoring devices on your phone, because they haven't been out in the wild long enough for the company IT people to put the dots together. And just because you've got a Samsung phone, like with mine, I ended up having to get a deal, and none of the apps that I used for showing people what these things look like on my phone worked on my phone for about 6 months. And I was like, really? How's come? It's not like I bought the 2022 way back in the end of 21. It was like the middle of 22, and I'm like, but they're all on there now. But just that's the hardest thing is somebody walks in and says, this is the newest phone. I walked into the store and bought it. That's your key right there. Also, all the different devices have little quirks. So once again, I offer my service to you to say, would you like to touch it before you buy it? Because looking at it on a screen or on a paper flyer, it's very different than touching it. And sometimes they don't show all the tips or tricks or how it gets there. How does it stick to you? You may have questions about how do I live with this thing stuck to me and how do I use it? And that's what I do. I love to help you learn how to use those things and how to, and once again, your diabetes care will change over time. So if it's been a long time or you've never sat down with the diabetes care and education person, it's just like this. It's a conversation. Where are you noticing challenges? What works good for you? In fact, that's the other thing. Along with changing the question, do you have diabetes? It's like, what's been working really well for you? Let's start there because that's what we want to celebrate. And that's what we want to say, how can we do more of that? Because that's what you already found works for you. So we don't need to change that. And food choices, sometimes it works fine and you've got the one day it doesn't. Then as life happens, every year or so, it might be time to dust off the plan. Or there's new tech, or you've got new meds to go, or you've done the best you can and all of a sudden you get a complication that can happen because of blood sugar, or other complications that make your diabetes management have to change. That's another time to check in, because then we can go, like if there's a dexterity problem or a memory, keeping track of things problem, that's what we do. We sit down together and figure out what will help you stay safe and on top of it. And then there's always that time in life when somebody new comes to help you be safe at home. So caregiver changes or care situation changes is another good time to stop in and let's look at your plan and make sure it's safe and that, you've lived it for so long, you're going to be like, I don't want to explain this to my cousin who's sitting here with me now. Come on in and we can teach them together. And when you come to me, I also, even through COVID, I said, if you have a person to come with you and listen with you, always bring a support person. Because otherwise, when you go home and tell them, I told you how you could have a piece of pie, they're going to say, no, she didn't. Yes, I did. Okay. Any questions? Did I talk enough? Or not enough? Do you need more time? No? Okay. Well, hopefully I get to see you at future events or make an appointment with us. The other good news I almost forgot to share, we have an endocrinologist at ACMC now. Good. And she's full-time and she's been working since October and it's not the 3 to 6 month wait. You can probably get in within a month or less right now.
What's her name?
Her name is Dr. Chillicothe. So it's just almost like Chillicothe, but it's O-T-I-A, Chillicothe. And
her office is at
it's at the Ashtabula clinic. So that first clinic area, she's up on the 3rd floor. And she sees all ages from 0 to wherever, however old we can get. And she does all things endocrinology. The growth, the failure to thrive, the diabetes, the bone health, the polycystic ovarian syndrome, hormone things, thyroid things, yeah. We are blessed to have her with us. And she lives in town too. Yeah, she's like 8 minutes away. And her husband works upstairs in pediatrics.
Okay.
So I hope, but we're just so happy to have her with us now. And because she's still new, there are still lots of openings in her schedule. Real fast, real easy to get in with her.
Good.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. And I look forward to talking to y'all again sometime.